I took delivery of my 2019 Tesla Model 3 about 16 months ago, and since then I've driven it a little more than 20,000 miles. I got the dual motor long range version that was rated at 310 miles per charge at the time. Now I say at the time because shortly after I took delivery, Tesla made some software adjustments and increased the Model 3's range to 322 miles, 2 software enhancements. And that stood until recently. Last week, Tesla announced now that the new Model 3 is going to have 353 miles of range. And that's pretty incredible because Tesla has increased the Model 3's range 14% in the last 16 months since I took possession of my car. And that's without making the battery any larger. So, you know, Tesla really's got the secret sauce when it comes to batteries and squeezing the most miles out of them. We got to give them credit for that. But, you know, we're here right now to talk about my feelings, my thoughts on ownership for 16 months and a little over 20,000 miles. But before we get into that, I want to remind everyone to click the subscribe button so you don't miss any of my electric vehicle reports and EV charging station reviews. Now, the Model 3 isn't just a great electric car. It's a great car, period. And although it's a great car, it's not perfect. So when I first got the car, I kind of expected there were going to be things that I didn't like about it. One of the things that I thought that might bother me was the fact that it didn't have a driver's instrument cluster. Now, every car I've ever owned in the past always had that. And I know Model 3 owners had said, you'll get used to it, you won't miss it. But I still was kind of a little hesitant, a little reluctant to believe that, but it turns out they were right. I actually really like the fact that it doesn't have that instrument cluster right in front of me, and partially because, well, first of all, I don't miss it. I can glance to my right really easily and see all the information I need on the center stack. But also, one of the things I really like is at night, the area where the instrument cluster would be is pitch black because there's nothing there, there's no light, so there's no glare, and it seems to me that I can see the road in front of me a little bit better because there's no glare from any instrumentation. You know, might be a minor thing, but you know, it actually turned out that something that I thought I wasn't gonna like, I actually prefer on the Model 3. The huge 15-inch center display is super responsive and is really the best display system of any car today. All of the functions are easily accessed and the navigation system is excellent. I love how the voice command easily recognizes business names so you don't have to know the address. You just say, navigate to Maria's Coffee, and it pulls it up and navigates you there really easily. The system also tells you what your estimated state of charge is going to be upon arrival at your destination, which is important if you're going on a long trip. And if you don't have enough charge to make it to that destination, the system will recommend supercharger stops that are along the route, and it'll also tell you how long you need to stop there to charge enough to be able to make it to your destination. That's a really, really cool feature. You could also tell Tesla is as much a software company as they are a car company by this incredible center display screen. Everything just works, and that's what you want. You don't want to be fumbling. You don't want to have to take weeks to learn how to use the system. It's all super intuitive, easy to access the information you need, and it's all right there at your fingertips. Tesla's center screen is fantastic in the Model 3. It's one of my favorite features on the car. On the road is where the Model 3 really shines. This dual motor long range goes 0 to 60 in a little over 4 seconds. That can keep up with some of the fastest sports cars on the road, and it's a 5-passenger family sedan. If I don't feel like driving really fast, I can switch it to chill mode, which reduces the amount of power the motor gets and kind of keeps me in check. Every now and then I'll put it in chill mode if I want to make sure I don't get myself in trouble on any given day. You can also adjust the steering. There are 3 different modes: comfort, standard, and sport. I generally have left it in standard mode. Put it on sport every now and then. There's not a huge difference. The steering's a little bit heavier in sport. You get a little more feedback, but I'm not on the track with this. And in standard mode, it seems to be a nice blend and what I'm most comfortable with. Regenerative braking, which is really important to me, is great on the Model 3. I leave it in standard, which is the heavy lift-off regeneration. Now, the Model 3, unlike some EVs, does not have a blended braking system. When you press the friction brakes, you get friction brakes. Some other EVs, what happens is when you initially press the friction brakes, you get some added regenerative braking force unless the car really needs to stop shortly, and then it adds the friction brakes. That's not how the Model 3 works. It is simple lift-off regeneration, and the pedal gives you friction brakes. You can also put it on low regenerative mode, which still is pretty heavy. To put that into comparison, I recently drove the Volkswagen ID4, and in the high regenerative braking mode, it was probably weaker than the low mode on the Model 3. But the ID4 does have blended brakes, so when you press the friction brake pedal, you get some added regeneration. Tesla has a much simpler system. Lift-off regen, brake is brake. But the driving experience is great. You can also do true one-pedal driving with the Model 3, which you can't with the Volkswagen ID4 because it always creeps. The Model 3 gives you the option to have an artificial creep. You can set it in the settings to either creep, to free roll, or to stop and hold when the vehicle rolls to a stop. I leave it on hold. I prefer that. I think many seasoned EV aficionados doesn't like artificial creep, likes true one-pedal driving, and likes the car to be able to hold. Now, that can vary from person to person, but many of the people that I told love the that I've spoken with love the way that Tesla incorporates the regenerative braking system. They allow you to set it to low, they allow you to set it to strong, and they also allow you to have creep if you want it, or to hold upon stopping if you prefer, which is what I prefer. The energy graph is also extremely accurate, which is vital to electric cars. You need to have confidence that you can rely on the estimated range, and you can with the Model 3. I've driven many EVs where the range estimator just can't be relied upon. And when I know I'll be cutting it close in my car on a trip, I use the energy graph. It's never let me down. Overall, the 15-inch touchscreen is really the visual centerpiece of the interior, and it pulls everything together, but it has to be functional since it controls so many of the necessary functions of the vehicle. It also has to be relied upon, and for the most part it is, but mine has frozen up 3 or 4 times on me already, and once it was in a very inopportune moment while I was driving. But the problem with that is it's a computer, and computers need to be rebooted every now and then. Luckily, the car continues to operate even if the screen doesn't, but you can do a simple reboot by you push the 2 round scrolling buttons on the steering wheel. You hold them in for like 10 seconds. You have to be stopped. You hold them in for 10 seconds, and then the center screen will reboot. Every time my screen has frozen up, and I did they call it a soft reboot, the screen has come to life and everything was working fine. I think that's, it's the computer age. These cars are more computer than they are anything else, especially Teslas. That's going to happen. As long as the car continues to function and you're able to reboot it, I don't see a big problem with that. The premium sound system is also very good, but that's not necessarily special to Tesla. There are a lot of really good sound systems out there in other cars, so I'm not going to really give Tesla too much credit for that. The one thing I will give them a lot of credit for is for the glass roof, which is really beautiful, and it's amazing to look out of, especially for the rear passengers. However, on really hot days, there can be a fair amount of heat coming into the cabin. Now, Tesla does have it tinted so that it's supposed to block like 98% of the UV rays, but there's still radiant heat because the glass gets hot. And on days that's over 90 degrees here in New Jersey, we don't get too many of them, but it seems like lately we get more and more of them than we did in the past. This summer was pretty hot. The top of my head does get hot from that radiant heat baking down on me. So I went out and purchased an aftermarket sunshade that kind of pops and clips in and it holds in there. Now the only problem with that is it's kind of inconvenient to take it in and out just for the hot days. So I end up leaving it in for like the whole summer, and then I don't get to really enjoy the glass roof. I wish Tesla would integrate a automatic opening and closing sunshade like some of the other EVs do, some of the other cars do in general. I just did the test drive on the Volkswagen ID4, and as an option they have a power sunshade which opens and closes at the touch of a button. I'd love that on the Model 3. Maybe Tesla will do something like that in the future. I think it would be a good feature to add. I do like the car's minimalistic interior, but I understand why some people criticize that and say it just doesn't feel premium, or for its price it should have a little bit of a nicer interior. That's a fair criticism. I happen to like the way the layout is, and I don't mind it at all. One thing I wish is that the seats had a little bit better lateral support. There are side bolsters and they do kind of hold you in place. I wish they were just a little bit tighter for my personal preference, but I know that's personal preference. It's not something that everybody is going to agree on, but if I had my way, the side bolsters would be just a little bit more beefy. I do wish the car had a grab handle for the passengers. I've had a couple of my passengers complain about that, especially my 83-year-old dad who uses the grab bar when he gets in and out of the vehicles. You know, it's just good to grab onto to lower yourself into the vehicle. Don't know why Tesla hasn't included that. It wouldn't be an expensive feature. It seems like it's something that many people would want, so it's a little baffling why the Model 3 doesn't have that. Perhaps at some point in the future they'll add it. I hope so, because I think it's something that many people would appreciate. I'm not a big fan of the plastic sun visor clips. You know, that might seem like a mild, something kind of mild to criticize, but mine's already broken. It broke when the person was changing the windshield, and they actually tried to say it was broken before, and I had to argue with Tesla. It was done at Tesla Service Center. They eventually replaced it for me, but evidently this is something that happens to a lot of Tesla owners. Since it happened to me and I wrote a post on it on Inside EVs, I've had a couple dozen people message me or comment that theirs broke also. I took it apart to really analyze it. It's really thin, flimsy plastic. If you do have a Model 3, make sure you pull your sun visor out. Don't pull it down at all, because you will snap that off. It's super inexpensive and it's easy to replace. It's just a couple screws, but it's a pain to do that. And evidently Tesla realized that it was not a good design, because with this new refresh that they're doing and the longer range and new center console, they've included the Model Y's magnetic sun visor clips. The ones that have been used in the Model 3 for the last 2 years are no longer going to be there. They have these really sleek magnetic clips that just kind of suck the sun visor up against the ceiling and hold it in place. Good improvement, and that's something that I'm glad that they fixed, because it was a pretty poor design. It was really thin plastic that can easily be broken. So that's a good improvement for the Model 3. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Tesla's Autopilot, which I love. Now, I have the basic Autopilot. I didn't go for the full self-driving, and quite honestly, until that is ready and 100% solid, I wouldn't pay for it personally. But I know people are doing it. Tesla's starting to roll out some beta testers now that are getting an early look at it. Let's see how that works out. Maybe sooner or later I will be getting it, but again, not until it is done. I'm not plucking down my money, even if I have to pay more for the time at the time. In any event, let me turn on Autopilot. There's the little noise to let us know that we have it, and it's reminding me to keep my hands on the wheel, which I always do. Now, it's important to note that while Tesla's Autopilot is fantastic, you have to pay attention. There are things that can come up that the car just cannot deal with. And we've all seen the videos on YouTube where cars are crashing, or unfortunately there's been some deaths where people have driven under trucks that were crossing the road. There are still things that the car cannot figure out. So you have to be alert, you have to be watching, you have to have your hands on the wheel, at least one hand on the wheel. You've got to give the steering wheel a little tug every now and then to make sure it knows that you're there. Tesla's cars cannot view the driver and see if they're alert and paying attention. It's all this tactical feedback on the steering wheel. There are some systems now, like Cadillac Super Cruise, that allow you to take your hands off the wheel because there are cameras monitoring the driver, making sure they're alert, paying attention, and ready to take over if the car needs them to. So there's a little bit of a difference there, but as the car works, as far as I'm concerned, it works fantastic. There has been a couple of instances where I had to take over, and they were in construction. I don't know if you noticed right there, you didn't notice, you're on video, the car just had a phantom braking. And I was going over under a road sign, and there was a shadow, and the car just pulled back. So that happens. There's a section of Route 80 in Rockaway that I drive all the time, where when I go under a certain overpass, when it's very sunny out and there's a dark shadow, it phantom brakes almost every time I go through it. We just witnessed it right there while I was driving. That was a very mild one. It just kind of tapped the brakes quickly, and went over the signs that went across the road, confused Autopilot for a little bit. So that's the reason why I wouldn't pay for the full self-driving just yet. I know Tesla's making huge advances, but I just don't think they're there yet. And when they are, I'll pay for it, probably. We'll see. Hopefully they'll do this subscription service that they were talking about, because I would definitely love that. Any event, Tesla's Autopilot, it's really a very smart adaptive cruise control, works great, and it's one of my favorite parts of the car on long drives. I've taken this up to Vermont, I've taken it to Washington, D.C. from New Jersey, and it just really makes long drives that much easier. You have to pay attention, but you definitely can relax a little bit more than when you're just constantly gripping the wheel and focusing on everything forward. The car does so much of the work for you, but you have to be there at the ready to take over if needed. Another thing I love about my Model 3 is how easy it is to quickly charge the battery. Even though it has a large 78 kilowatt hour battery, Tesla has built into the car very high speed charging, which really makes it convenient, especially for long road trips. On daily charging, the Model 3 can accept up to 48 amps, which is the most power of any production electric vehicle can accept today. No car charges faster on AC. I have the Tesla wall connector here, which can deliver the 48 amps to the car. So even if the car was empty, on level 2 charging, I can recharge it in somewhere around 6 to 7 hours, which overnight would be fine. You'd never have to wake up and not have a fully charged battery. On the road is where Tesla really has the incredible advantage. Now, I know the supercharger network isn't physically a part of my Model 3, but I have to include it in this review because it comes with the car. You get to use the supercharger network, and it's such an advantage that if I didn't mention it, it definitely wouldn't be right, because this supercharger network is so expansive and so easy to use that it's a tremendous advantage. All you have to do is pull into the spot, grab the connector, plug it in, walk away from the car. You don't have to fumble with apps. You don't have to pull out RFID cards, make sure the handshake connects. It just works, and it's fast. My Model 3 can accept up to 250 kilowatts, which means on long trips, and I've driven the car up to Vermont from New Jersey and also down to Washington, D.C. It's a 15-minute stop, and I've added hundreds of miles of range. The supercharger network is something that, like I said, isn't attached to the car, but you get it with it, and it is a fantastic advantage. It makes living with the Model 3 so much easier than most other electric vehicles. Which brings us to over-the-air updates, which everybody, including me, absolutely loves. Why wouldn't I love it? My car just keeps getting better. And that's an awesome feature. For instance, one of the things that used to bother me when I first got the car was the fact that when I walked away from the car in my garage, the doors would automatically lock. Now, there's a setting in the car so that when you walk away from the car, it automatically locks. You obviously want that when you're out shopping or anywhere in public. You want the car to lock behind you when you walk away. However, you don't necessarily need it to do that when it's in your locked garage like I have here, and there was no way to change that. So I would come home and go inside the house, and later on I'd remember, oh, I left something in the car. I'd go out to get it, and the car would be locked. I couldn't get in it because I didn't have my phone on me. I had to go back in the house. Sometimes my phone was upstairs in my office and come back down. It happened a lot, and it was really annoying. Even for charging the car, if I forgot to plug the car in, and I'd say, oh yeah, I got to plug it in. I'd walk out to the garage, the car's locked, the charge port won't open. It was a pain, and it really bothered me. It was one of the things that was really starting to make the ownership tarnished a little bit because it happened so frequently. Then one day there was an over-the-air update, and I noticed in the update notes you can say exclude home for the walk-away locking, which is awesome. Now my car, when I come in at home, doesn't lock. It's in the garage, it's sealed, it's safe. I don't need it locked. But if I have to run out to the car to get something out of the trunk, or I want to unplug the car or plug the car in, it's open for me. It's not locked. I love it. Fantastic. These over-the-air updates are great. What other car just continues to get better? Hopefully this is going to happen with all cars in the future, but for now, Tesla really has this down pat. I know some other car makers are now starting to say they're going to offer over-the-air updates. We haven't seen what updates they're going to offer, how frequent they're going to offer updates, but it seems like with my Model 3, every month or two, I get that notification, you got an over-the-air update, click accept, and all of a sudden the car's better than it was 20 minutes earlier. As you might have guessed, I do love my Model 3, and I don't have any regrets for getting one. I love it so much that I just sold it. Yep. Right now you're looking at the new owner driving down my driveway and taking my Model 3 out of my life after a blissful 16 months and 20,806 miles. So why would I sell it? Well, once I heard the new Model 3 was going to have the magnetic sun visor clips, I just had to have it. That, plus the reason that the new Model 3 also has the heat pump system that the Model Y has. It has the blackout trim on the exterior instead of the chrome. It has the new center console. It has the new wheel covers, the new aero wheel covers, which I never really liked the aero wheel covers that came on the previous Model 3s. The new one I think looks a lot more sleek, and I'll probably will leave those on. Unlike with my Model 3, I had to immediately take them off and just use the wheels that were underneath. I actually think I'll leave these on because they look pretty good. That plus the 353 mile EPA range. That's quite a bit more than mine. Now, I talked earlier about the fact that mine had a 310 mile EPA range rating when new. Okay, car isn't new anymore. It now fully charges to 283 miles. That's a capacity loss of 27 miles. That's not that great. In only 16 months and 20,000 miles, my car's lost 9% of its range. Now, to put that in perspective, I had my 2014 BMW i3 for 3.5 years and 73,000 miles, and it still had 91% of its original capacity. So my i3 lost 9% of its range in 73,000 miles. My Tesla Model 3 lost 9% of its range in 16 months and only 21,000 miles. So it's a little bit more capacity loss than I would like to see. However, I have other friends that have Model 3s that have not experienced this. Don't know why it's really happening on my car. I know how to take care of an EV battery. I've been doing it forever. I keep the state of charge between 20 and 80% most of the time. I very rarely take it down under 5%. When I do, I immediately plug it in and charge it. It never sits at a low state of charge. I only charged it to 100% maybe 5 times in the 16 months. I usually charge to 80 or 85%. I don't need any more range than that. I don't live in a really hot climate area where it's baking in the parking lot or 120 degrees in Arizona. So I did all the right things for the battery, yet it still went from 310 mile range rating. Now when I slide that bar to 100% charge, it reads 283 miles. So, you know, and I've noticed it's been a steady decline. It didn't just drop hugely once. So it's a little more capacity loss than what I would have expected. Evidently, that capacity loss didn't scare me away because I bought another one. And as soon as I get it, we'll be doing some range tests with the new car with the 353 mile range. We'll do the 70 mile an hour highway range test. We'll probably do some supercharger, V3 supercharger timing tests, and probably a full walk around video to show what's changed between the previous Model 3 and the new one. Tesla estimates it's going to be about 6 weeks before the car's in, so we're going to have a little bit of a gap here. In the meantime, I'll be doing a bunch of EV charging station reviews, really comprehensive reviews of all the most popular models, so you don't want to miss that. As I said earlier, please click the subscribe button below. You won't miss any of the content on my new Model 3, on other electric vehicles, and also our charging station reviews here on State of Charge. Thanks for watching.